am Sister Abigail, a woman who chose a life of devotion, only to find my heart entwined in a forbidden love that I never expected. For decades, I kept my feelings hidden, terrified of the consequences that could shatter my world. But love has a way of breaking through even the toughest barriers. As I navigated the complexities of my faith and my heart, I realized that I could no longer live a lie. This is the story of how I grappled with my vows and the man who captured my soul, and how the truth finally emerged, shaking the very foundation of my life. Before we dive deeper, let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from, and if this resonates with your own journey. If you find my story moving, consider subscribing. Your support gives me the strength to share my truth. Now let's begin the journey together. I am Sister Abigail, now in my 70s. I look back at my life with a mix of sadness and clarity. My past is one of secrecy and unconfessed love. For many years I hid my feelings. They grew like a shadow in my heart. I thought I could bury them deep, but that was not possible. I entered the convent at 18. My life was once filled with faith and purpose. I wanted to serve God and help others. The convent felt like home. There were rules to follow and a structure to my days. There were other sisters, and we formed a close-knit community. We shared prayers, meals, and laughter. Yet the strict rules weighed heavily on us. We took vows of chastity, obedience, and poverty. I believed these vows were the path to true happiness. But deep inside I felt a conflict. My heart was torn between my faith and feelings I could not control. I thought love was not meant for me. I thought my devotion to God would fill my life. But then everything changed. I met Father Thomas. He was a new priest in our parish. He came to the convent often. He was kind and charismatic. I admired his passion for helping others. During his visits, I felt a warmth that I had not known before. Each time he smiled, I felt something stir inside me. First, I tried to ignore it. I told myself that priests and nuns had separate lives. Yet, I could not help but feel drawn to him. Our conversations became more than just polite exchanges. We talked about faith, life, and our dreams. He listened intently. I felt seen and valued. I noticed the way he looked at me. There was something in his eyes that made my heart race. I began to look forward to his visits. Each moment with him was both a gift and a burden. I felt excitement mixed with fear. As time passed, the connection between us deepened. I started to notice small things. The way he brushed his fingers against mine when he handed me a book. The way he lingered a moment longer when he said goodbye. Each encounter made my heart swell, but it also filled me with guilt. I had taken vows. I had promised to serve God above all else. I confided in Sister Mary, my closest friend. I told her about my struggle, but I left out the name of the priest. She noticed my changing demeanor. I became distracted and less focused on my duties. She could see that something was wrong. She urged me to talk about it. Her concern made me feel guilty. I wanted to be strong and faithful, but I was losing myself in this forbidden attraction. I spent nights wrestling with my thoughts. I prayed for guidance, for strength to overcome my feelings. But the more I prayed, the more I longed for him. I felt trapped in a web of my own making. I was torn between my vows and my heart. I wanted to be a good nun, but I also wanted to experience love. I felt like I was living a double life. The days turned into weeks and the tension grew. Every time Father Thomas came to the convent, I felt a mix of joy and dread. I knew I was crossing a line, but I couldn't stop myself. My heart was leading me down a path I had never expected. I tried to push my feelings away, but they only grew stronger. It felt like a fire inside me, consuming my thoughts. I remember a day when we were alone in the garden. The sun shone brightly and the flowers bloomed all around us. We talked about life outside the convent. He shared his dreams, and I felt a pull toward him. I wanted to tell him how I felt, but fear held me back. What would he think? What would my sisters think? I knew the consequences could be severe. But in that moment, it felt as if the world had faded away. It was just him and me. I saw a softness in his eyes that reflected my own feelings. I wanted to reach out and touch him, to feel his warmth. But I held back, knowing I should not. My heart ached for something I could not have. As the days passed, I became more aware of the gravity of my situation. I knew I had to make a choice. I could continue to fight against my heart, but that would only lead to more pain. Or I could embrace my feelings and face the consequences. The thought terrified me, yet it also excited me. The idea of being free to love was a dream I had never allowed myself to entertain. I often found myself in prayer seeking clarity. I asked God for strength to follow His path. But in my heart, I felt a longing for something different. I was beginning to understand that love is not always a sin. Sometimes it is a gift, even if it comes with challenges. I had to confront my feelings head-on. I could not keep living in denial. The weight of my unconfessed love was becoming unbearable. I had to decide whether to remain in the convent or to confess my love and risk everything. It was a choice that would change my life forever. With each passing day, the urgency grew. I felt a strong need to speak my truth. I knew that holding it all inside would only lead to heartbreak. The love I felt for Father Thomas was real and it demanded to be acknowledged. I could no longer ignore the pull of my heart. As I reflected on my life, I realized that love is a powerful force. It can challenge our beliefs, break our hearts, and also heal us. I had to find a way to reconcile my faith with my feelings. I did not know what the future held, but I knew I had to face it with courage. The time for change was coming and I could feel it in my bones. I remember my early life clearly. I grew up in a small town surrounded by love and faith. My parents taught me the importance of serving others. They were devoted to their church, and I admired their commitment. As a child, I felt a calling to serve God. I wanted to make a difference in the world. At 18, I made the decision to enter the convent. I sought purpose and a deeper connection with my faith. The day I took my vows was filled with hope. I believed I was making the right choice. The convent became my home, a place where I felt safe and accepted. I found comfort in the routine of daily prayers, work, and community. There were 5 of us nuns at the convent. Each sister had her own gifts and strengths. Sister Mary was kind and always ready to lend a hand. Sister Joan was wise and shared her knowledge with us. Sister Anne had a joyful spirit, always making us laugh. Together, we formed a strong bond. We supported each other through challenges and celebrated our successes. Our Mother Superior, Sister Margaret, was a strict but caring leader. She guided us with a firm hand and a loving heart. She taught us that discipline was essential in our journey of faith. We followed strict rules and we were expected to live by them. Our vows of chastity, obedience, and poverty were our promises to God. We believed that by living these vows, we could find true happiness. Life in the convent was fulfilling. I enjoyed helping with the community. We visited the sick, taught children, and provided food for the needy. Each task brought me joy. I felt like I was making a difference. My faith grew stronger as I dedicated my life to service. But beneath the surface, I felt a struggle. I wanted to be a good nun, but I also longed for companionship. The other sisters were my family, but I often felt lonely. I watched as they formed close friendships with one another. I wanted that connection, but I held back. I was afraid of breaking my vows and disappointing God. One day, while I was working in the garden, I noticed how beautiful the flowers were. They bloomed in bright colors, and they filled the air with sweet scents. I realized that life could be vibrant and full of love. But I also knew that my life in the convent was about sacrifice. I chose this path to serve God, and I wanted to honor that choice. Despite my commitment, I could not ignore my feelings. The arrival of Father Thomas changed everything. He brought energy and warmth to our parish. When he visited the convent, he filled the space with light. He was not just a priest. He was a person full of compassion. I admired him from the moment I met him. When Father Thomas spoke, I listened intently. He shared stories of his experiences and I was captivated. I felt a connection that I had never felt before. He treated me with respect and kindness, and I began to look forward to his visits. Each meeting was a reminder of my struggle between duty and desire. The other sisters noticed the change in me. I became more animated and alive when Father Thomas was around. They teased me gently, but I felt the weight of my feelings. I wanted to be close to him, but I was also scared. I knew the rules and I understood the consequences of breaking them. I was torn between my calling and my heart. As time passed, I found myself in a constant battle. I wanted to honor my vows, but my heart was leading me in a different direction. I prayed for guidance, hoping for clarity. I asked God to help me understand my feelings. I wanted to stay true to my faith, but I also wanted to experience love. The more I struggled, the more I realized that my feelings for Father Thomas were not going away. They were becoming a part of me, and I could no longer ignore them. I felt like I was living in a cage, trapped by my own promises. I wanted to break free, but fear held me back. Sister Mary was my confidant. I shared my thoughts with her, but I was careful not to reveal the name of the priest. I knew she would understand my struggle, but I also feared her judgment. I wanted her support, but I was afraid of what she might say. One evening, as we sat in the common room, Sister Mary looked at me with concern. She asked me why I seemed so distant. I hesitated, unsure of how to answer. I wanted to tell her everything, but I held back. I knew I was hiding something important. But how could I confess my feelings without risking everything I had built? I felt the weight of her gaze. I knew she cared for me, and that made it harder. I wanted to be honest, but I was terrified of the consequences. I told her I was simply tired and needed time to reflect. It was a lie, but it was easier than revealing my truth. As the days turned into weeks, I continued to struggle. The tension between my heart and my vows grew. I prayed harder than ever, hoping for a sign. I wanted to know if my feelings were wrong, or if they were a part of my journey. I needed to find peace. I often thought about the love I had witnessed in the world. I had seen couples hold hands, laugh together, and support one another. I had longed for that connection, but I had chosen this life. I had committed to God and to serving others. I wanted to be faithful, but my heart was restless. The weight of my unconfessed love became heavier each day. I realized that I was at a crossroads. I could continue to suppress my feelings, or I could confront them. The thought terrified me, but I knew I had to choose a path. I had to find a way to reconcile my faith with my heart. As I reflected on my life, I began to understand that love is not always a choice. Sometimes it chooses us. I wanted to be true to myself, but I also wanted to honor my commitment to God. It was a delicate balance, and I needed to find a way to navigate it. In that moment of reflection, I felt a glimmer of hope. I realized that love could coexist with faith. I had to believe that it was possible to find a way forward. I needed to be brave enough to face my feelings and seek the truth. The journey ahead would be challenging, but I was ready to take the first step. Father Thomas arrived at the convent one sunny afternoon. I had heard that he would be visiting, and my heart raced with both excitement and fear. He walked in with a warm smile. I could feel the energy in the room shift when he entered. It was as if the air was charged with something powerful. I tried to keep my thoughts focused, but it was difficult. He greeted the sisters and spoke with them, but I could hardly concentrate on their conversation. I watched him from a distance, my heart pounding. He was charismatic and kind, and every time he looked my way, I felt a rush of emotions. I knew I had to be careful. I had to keep my feelings hidden, but it was becoming harder to do. During his visit, Father Thomas took time to talk to me. We stepped away from the group, finding a quiet corner in the garden. The sun shone brightly, and the flowers around us were in full bloom. It was a beautiful day, but I felt a storm brewing inside me. I wanted to keep my distance, but I couldn't help but be drawn to him. We talked about our work in the community and shared stories of the people we had met. I found myself laughing more than usual, feeling lighter in his presence. Our conversation flowed easily, and for a moment, I forgot about my inner turmoil. But then as he spoke, I caught myself studying his face. I felt a longing to reach out and touch him. In that moment, I realized how dangerously close I was to crossing a line. I felt an urge to share my feelings, to confess what was in my heart. But fear held me back. I worried about what would happen if I revealed my truth. What would he think? Would he reject me? Would I face consequences for my feelings? As our conversation continued, I noticed the way he looked at me. There was a softness in his gaze that made my heart skip a beat. I felt a connection that I had never experienced before. It was electric and terrifying. I wanted to lean in closer, to close the distance between us. But I knew I had to keep my composure. As we spoke, I noticed small moments that intensified my feelings. The way he brushed his hand against mine as he gestured while talking. The way his voice softened when he spoke my name. Each interaction felt significant, and I could feel the tension building between us. I was caught in a whirlwind of emotions, trying to hold onto my vows while yearning for his affection. Later that day, after Father Thomas had left, I found it hard to focus. The other sisters noticed my distraction. Sister Mary approached me, concern etched on her face. She asked if I was all right, and I hesitated. I wanted to confide in her, but fear gripped me. I didn't want to reveal my feelings for Father Thomas. I didn't want to risk judgment or misunderstanding. I told her I was tired and needed time to think. She nodded but looked unconvinced. I could see the worry in her eyes. I felt guilty for hiding my truth from her. I wanted to be open, but the fear of losing my place in the convent held me back. Days passed and Father Thomas returned for another visit. I felt a mix of anticipation and dread. Each time he appeared, the bond between us grew stronger. I tried to resist, but my heart was leading me down a path I could no longer ignore. The moments we shared were becoming more intense, and I found myself longing for more. During one visit, Father Thomas invited me to join him for a walk outside the convent. I hesitated, knowing it was a risk, but my heart urged me to say yes. As we walked together, I felt a sense of freedom. The sun warmed my skin and the fresh air filled my lungs. We talked about our dreams and aspirations, and I felt a connection I had never felt with anyone before. As we walked, our hands brushed against each other. I felt a spark, and I couldn't help but look into his eyes. In that moment, everything felt possible. I could see the warmth and kindness shining in his gaze. I wanted to lean in closer to share my heart. But doubt crept in. What if this was wrong? What if my feelings led to heartbreak? Then came a moment that changed everything. Father Thomas paused and turned to me. He took a deep breath, as if searching for the right words. I held my breath, my heart racing. I felt vulnerable, exposed. I knew he sensed the tension between us. He looked into my eyes, and I could see the conflict in his own. He spoke softly, expressing his admiration for my dedication to the community. He praised my work and the kindness I showed to others. I felt flattered, but my heart ached for something more. I wanted him to see me not just as a sister, but as a woman with feelings and desires. In that moment of honesty, I felt compelled to share my truth. I wanted to confess my feelings for him. But just as I was about to speak, doubt flooded my mind. What if he rejected me? What if I lost everything I had worked for? I held back, afraid of the consequences. The air felt thick with tension. I could sense the unspoken words hanging between us. I wanted to reach out to bridge the gap that separated us. A fear gripped me tightly. I felt torn between my heart and my vows. As we continued to walk, I knew I had to make a choice. I could keep my feelings hidden, but that would only lead to more pain. Or I could take a leap of faith and share my heart. The decision weighed heavily on me. I didn't know what the future held, but I felt a strong urge to confront my feelings. After our walk, I returned to the convent, my mind racing. I knew I couldn't keep living in this limbo. My heart was longing for something real. I needed to find a way to express my feelings for Father Thomas. I had to confront my emotions and seek the truth. As I lay in bed that night, I felt both fear and excitement. I knew I was on the brink of something significant. I had to choose between my life as a nun and the possibility of love. Whatever path I chose, I knew it would change everything. I was ready to face my feelings, no matter the cost. As the days passed after my walk with Father Thomas, I felt a mix of emotions stirring inside me. I was both excited and terrified. My heart was in turmoil. I couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed between us. I needed to confront my feelings, but the fear of the unknown held me back. I began to notice small things that made my heart race. Whenever Father Thomas visited the convent, I could feel him looking at me differently. His gaze lingered a moment longer, and I could sense a connection that was hard to ignore. Each time he spoke, his voice felt deeper, more intimate. I could hardly focus on anything else. Sister Mary was becoming more aware of my feelings. She watched me closely, noticing the way I lit up when Father Thomas was near. One evening, she confronted me gently. She asked if something was going on between us. Her eyes were filled with concern, and I felt a wave of guilt wash over me. I wanted to tell her everything, but I held back, afraid of what it might mean. I confessed to her that I felt a connection with Father Thomas, but I quickly added that I knew it was wrong. I told her I was struggling to keep my vows. She listened intently, her expression softening. She encouraged me to be honest with myself. She reminded me that love is a powerful force and it does not always follow the rules we set for ourselves. Her words resonated with me. I realized that I needed to confront my feelings directly. I had to find a way to be true to myself. But how could I do that without risking everything I had built in the convent? The thought of losing my place among my sisters was daunting. The next time Father Thomas visited, I felt a sense of urgency. I knew I had to speak up. I wanted to share my feelings, but I was also scared of what it would mean. As he entered the convent, my heart raced. I greeted him with a smile, but inside, I was a storm of emotions. We found a quiet spot in the garden again. The flowers were blooming, but I felt a weight on my heart. We talked about our work, but I could sense the tension in the air. I wanted to reach out to say something that could change everything. but I hesitated, fearing the consequences. Finally, I mustered the courage to say something. I spoke softly, telling him how much I admired him. I shared my appreciation for his kindness and dedication. As I spoke, I could see the warmth in his eyes. He listened intently, and I felt a spark of hope. Maybe this was the moment I had been waiting for. Then something shifted. Father Thomas took a step closer. He looked deep into my eyes, and I felt my heart race. He spoke, his voice low and sincere. He told me that he felt a connection too. He admitted that he had struggled with his feelings since he met me. My heart soared, but I was also filled with dread. What would this mean for us? In that moment, everything changed. We were no longer just a priest and a nun. We were two people who cared deeply for each other. I felt a rush of emotions, excitement, fear, and a sense of freedom. But the reality of our situation loomed over us. We were bound by our vows, and I knew the consequences of our feelings could be severe. I took a deep breath and confessed my feelings to him. I told him I had been struggling with my heart for weeks. I shared my fears about breaking my vows and the pain it could cause. I felt vulnerable, but I needed him to understand the depth of my emotions. Father Thomas listened closely, his expression serious. He told me he admired my honesty. He shared his own inner conflict, explaining how he felt torn between his duty to the church and his feelings for me. It was a moment of honesty that brought us closer. I felt a connection that I never thought possible, but the weight of our situation pressed down on me. As we stood there, I felt the urge to reach out and take his hand. I wanted to bridge the gap that separated us. But I hesitated, knowing that one touch could change everything. Instead, I looked into his eyes, searching for understanding. I needed to know if we could find a way forward. Father Thomas reached out and gently touched my arm. The warmth of his hand sent a shiver down my spine. He told me that love is a gift from God and it is not something to be taken lightly. But he also believed that we should not ignore our feelings. He wanted to explore the possibility of being together, but he acknowledged the risks involved. In that moment, I felt a mix of hope and fear. I knew we were standing at a crossroads. We could choose to ignore our feelings and go back to our separate lives, or we could take a leap of faith and see where our hearts led us. But the stakes were high and the consequences could be devastating. As we talked, I felt a sense of clarity wash over me. I realized that I wanted to take the risk. I wanted to explore this connection to see where it could lead. But I also knew that I had to be cautious. I had to protect not only my heart but also my life in the convent. Father Thomas agreed that we should be careful. We decided to keep our feelings between us for now. It was a heavy burden to carry, but it felt right. We would take it one step at a time, allowing our feelings to grow while remaining mindful of the commitments we had made. As we parted that day, I felt a mix of emotions. I was filled with hope for the future, but I also felt the weight of secrecy. I knew the path ahead would be challenging, but I was ready to face it. I wanted to embrace this love, even if it meant navigating a complicated journey. The days turned into weeks, and our bond only grew stronger. We exchanged meaningful glances, shared quiet moments, and found ways to connect without drawing attention. I felt a sense of joy that I had never known before, but I also felt the weight of the world on my shoulders. I was beginning to understand that love is not easy. It requires courage, honesty, and the willingness to face the unknown. I knew I was on a path that would change my life forever, and I was ready to embrace it, no matter the cost. As the weeks went by, I found myself in a whirlwind of emotions. My feelings for Father Thomas were growing stronger, but so was the fear of what we were doing. We met often, sharing stolen moments filled with laughter and warmth. Each encounter left me feeling alive, but also filled with guilt. I was breaking my vows, and the weight of that secret was heavy on my heart. One evening, I took a walk in the garden to collect my thoughts. The sun was setting, casting a warm glow over everything. The flowers were in full bloom, but I felt a storm brewing inside me. I needed to see Father Thomas again. I knew that we needed to talk about our feelings, to confront what was happening between us. I suggested we meet after dark, away from the eyes of the convent. It felt risky, but I was ready to take that leap. That night, I felt a mix of excitement and fear as I waited for him. My heart raced as I heard footsteps approaching. Father Thomas appeared, and the sight of him took my breath away. The moonlight highlighted his features, and I felt drawn to him. We found a quiet spot behind the convent. The air was cool and the night was still. I could feel the tension between us. I wanted to reach out and hold his hand, but I hesitated. I knew this meeting was crucial. We needed to decide what to do next. We talked about everything: the joy we felt when we were together, the fear of being discovered, and the weight of our secrets. I confessed that I had never felt this way before. He listened intently, his eyes filled with understanding. He told me he felt the same way. Each moment we shared felt like a gift, but I also knew it was dangerous. During our conversation, we began to talk about our first kiss. I recalled the moment with clarity. It had been electric, filled with both excitement and fear. I remembered the rush of emotions as our lips met, how it felt like the world had stopped. It had been a moment of pure connection, but it had also crossed a line I had promised never to cross. Father Thomas looked at me with a mix of longing and concern. He spoke softly, saying that our feelings were real, but we had to be careful. The church held strict rules, and if anyone found out, the consequences would be severe. I nodded, knowing he was right. But my heart ached at the thought of losing him. As we stood there, I could feel the weight of our choices pressing down on us. I wanted to embrace him, to close the distance between us, but fear held me back. What would happen if we let our emotions take control? I felt torn between my heart and my vows. Then in a moment of courage, Father Thomas took my hand in his. It felt warm and comforting, and I knew that I had to be honest. I told him that I wanted to explore our feelings further, but I was terrified of what that meant. I worried about the life I had chosen and the vows I had made. Would I be willing to risk it all for love? He squeezed my hand gently, reassuring me. He said that love was worth fighting for, but we needed to be smart. We could not let our emotions blind us. We had to keep our relationship a secret, at least for now. I agreed, even though my heart ached at the thought of hiding. As we talked, the air felt charged with a mix of hope and uncertainty. I knew we were on the brink of something significant. I wanted to be brave, to embrace this love, but I was aware of the risks. I could feel the tension in the air, and I knew we had to tread carefully. Then came the moment that changed everything. Father Thomas leaned in closer, and I could feel my heart racing. He asked if I would meet him again, away from the convent where we could talk freely. The thought thrilled me but also scared me. I could feel the weight of our decisions pressing down on me. I agreed, wanting to see him again. The thrill of our secret meetings was intoxicating, but I also felt the fear of being caught. I knew that if anyone discovered our relationship, it could ruin everything. The thought made my stomach churn, but I couldn't deny my feelings. The next week, we met again in a secluded park outside the convent. The stars were bright, and the air was filled with the sounds of nature. It felt like a different world, far from the constraints of the convent. We talked and laughed, sharing our hopes and dreams. I felt a sense of freedom that I had never experienced before. During that meeting, we shared our second kiss. It was sweet and tender, filled with the promise of something more. In that moment, I felt a rush of joy but also a pang of fear. The thrill of our connection was powerful, but I knew it came with risks. As we pulled away, I looked into his eyes and saw a mix of emotions, happiness, longing, and concern. I could sense that he was aware of the storm brewing around us. We were playing with fire, and I knew we had to be careful. Father Thomas spoke again about the importance of keeping our relationship a secret. I understood, but it also felt like a heavy burden to carry. After that night, our meetings continued under the cover of darkness. Each encounter was filled with stolen moments, laughter, and whispered dreams. But with each kiss, I felt the weight of secrecy pressing down on my heart. I was torn between the joy of being with him and the fear of what we were risking. As time passed, I noticed changes in myself. I felt more alive when I was with him, but I also felt more anxious. Each day brought new challenges. I worried about the sisters noticing my distraction. I was afraid they would suspect something was wrong. The thought of being discovered haunted me. Despite the fear, I knew I had to confront my feelings. I wanted to embrace this love, but I had to be honest with myself. I needed to decide what I was willing to risk for a chance at happiness. The journey ahead was uncertain, but I was ready to face it. I had to find a way to reconcile my love for Father Thomas with my commitment to the convent. In the quiet moments, I reflected on my life. I realized that love is a powerful force that can change everything. I had to be brave enough to embrace it, even if it meant facing difficult choices. I wanted to explore this love, to see where it would lead us. It was time to confront the truth, no matter the cost. The days turned into weeks, and our secret meetings continued. Each moment with Father Thomas was filled with joy, but I also felt a growing sense of anxiety. The weight of our hidden relationship pressed down on me. I was living in a world of contradictions, joyous in love yet heavy with guilt. One evening, after a particularly sweet meeting, I returned to the convent feeling both elated and anxious. The sisters were gathered in the common room, sharing stories and laughter. I wanted to join them, but the fear of being discovered held me back. I felt like an outsider, hiding a part of myself that was growing larger by the day. Sister Mary noticed my distant demeanor. She approached me with concern, asking if I was all right. I hesitated, feeling the urge to confide in her, but I couldn't bring myself to do it. I told her I was just tired, wanting to avoid her probing questions. But I could see the worry in her eyes. The next day everything changed. I woke up to find a tense atmosphere in the convent. I noticed the sisters whispering among themselves, their expressions serious. I felt a knot tighten in my stomach. Something was wrong, but I didn't know what. I tried to focus on my duties, but the unease hung in the air like a storm cloud. Later that afternoon, Sister Margaret called a meeting. We gathered in the chapel, and I could feel the tension rising. The atmosphere was heavy, and I sensed that something important was about to be revealed. As Sister Margaret spoke, I felt my heart race. She told us that there had been whispers of inappropriate behavior in the convent. My stomach dropped. I knew they were talking about me and Father Thomas. My heart raced as I listened. Sister Margaret continued, stating that the church would not tolerate any actions that could bring shame to our community. I felt a chill run down my spine. The weight of secrecy was crashing down around me. Sister Mary glanced at me, her eyes wide with concern. I could see the realization dawning on her face. She knew I was involved. I felt panic rising within me. I wanted to shout that it wasn't true, but I also knew that the truth would expose me. I felt trapped. As the meeting concluded, I could barely think straight. I rushed out of the chapel, my heart pounding. I needed to find Father Thomas. I needed to warn him. I couldn't let him face the consequences alone. I searched for him, my mind racing. I felt an overwhelming urge to protect him, even if it meant risking everything. When I found him, he was standing near the convent entrance, looking troubled. I rushed to him, my breath coming in quick bursts. I told him what I had heard. I could see the concern in his eyes as I spoke. He took my hands and I felt a surge of warmth. But I also sensed the gravity of our situation. Father Thomas explained that he had heard rumors as well. He was worried about the implications for both of us. I could see the weight of responsibility resting on his shoulders. He spoke about the potential consequences if our relationship was exposed. I felt a wave of fear wash over me. I didn't want to lose him, but I also didn't want to bring shame to the convent. We stood in silence for a moment, the reality of our situation settling in. I wanted to reassure him, to say that we could find a way through this. But I felt helpless. Our love was becoming a source of danger, and I didn't know how to navigate it. Then, in a moment of desperation, I suggested we confess our feelings to Sister Margaret. Perhaps being honest would help us find a way forward. Father Thomas hesitated, shaking his head. He explained that confession would only lead to our expulsion. I understood his fear, but the thought of hiding felt suffocating. As we talked, I realized that we were at a crossroads. We could continue to live in fear, hiding our love, or we could face the truth together. But what would that truth cost us? I felt torn between my love for him and my commitment to the convent. That night I could hardly sleep. I lay awake, replaying our conversation in my mind. I felt an overwhelming urge to fight for our love, but I also feared the consequences. I knew I had to make a decision, but the weight of it pressed down on me. The next day, I found Sister Mary alone in the garden. I felt a strong urge to confide in her. I needed her support and I wanted her to understand. I took a deep breath and decided to tell her the truth. I explained my feelings for Father Thomas, the depth of our connection, and the fear that gripped me. She listened quietly, her expression shifting from concern to understanding. I could see that she was processing what I was saying. After I finished, she took a moment before replying. She told me that love is powerful and cannot be ignored. She encouraged me to be true to my heart, but she also warned me about the risks. Sister Mary explained that the church would not look kindly on our relationship. I listened intently as she shared her thoughts. She urged me to consider what was truly important to me. I felt a sense of relief in sharing my truth, but I also felt the weight of her words. That evening, I met with Father Thomas again. I shared what Sister Mary had said. We talked about our options, weighing the risks against our feelings. I could see the pain in his eyes as we discussed what lay ahead. We both knew that we had to make a choice. In that moment of honesty, I felt a shift within myself. I realized that I didn't want to live in fear any longer. I was ready to confront the truth, no matter the cost. I wanted to embrace our love, even if it meant facing the consequences together. As we stood together in the fading light, I took his hands and looked into his eyes. I told him I was willing to fight for us. I was ready to face whatever came our way. I wanted to be true to myself and to him. Father Thomas nodded, a mix of relief and concern washing over his face. We knew that the road ahead would be difficult, but we were ready to face it together. We embraced in that moment, feeling the strength of our connection. It was time to confront our fears and seek the truth, no matter where it led us. The days following my decision felt like a whirlwind. I had chosen to embrace my love for Father Thomas, and with that came a mix of excitement and fear. I was ready to face the truth, but I didn't know what it would mean for us. We agreed to meet again in secret, away from the convent. I wanted to talk about how we would confront our feelings and the rumors swirling around us. The tension was high, and I could feel the weight of our choice pressing down on me. I needed to know how he felt about taking this step. That night, we met under the stars in a quiet park outside the convent. The moonlight illuminated the path, and I felt a sense of calm wash over me as I approached him. Father Thomas was already there, waiting for me with a serious expression. I could see the concern etched on his face, and my heart ached at the thought of what lay ahead. We started our conversation with the heavy topic of our relationship. I told him I was scared but ready. I wanted to be honest both with myself and with the church. Father Thomas nodded, taking my hands in his. He expressed his own fears about what would happen if we were discovered. He knew that the church would not accept our love. I felt a knot in my stomach. We both understood that our love had consequences. There was a chance we could be expelled from the convent. I could feel the weight of that possibility, but I also felt a strong resolve to face it together. Our connection was worth fighting for. As we talked, the reality of our situation began to sink in. Father Thomas explained that he had been offered a transfer to another parish. He said that it could be a fresh start for him, but it would also mean leaving behind everything he had built at the convent. I felt a pang of sadness at the thought of losing him. I asked him what he wanted to do. Did he want to take the transfer, or did he want to stay and fight for us? He hesitated, clearly torn. He wanted to support me, but he also feared the repercussions of staying. I could see the internal struggle written on his face. In that moment, I realized how much I cared for him. I wanted him to be happy, even if it meant sacrificing our love. I told him that I understood if he needed to leave. I would support his decision no matter what. But deep down, I wished he would choose to stay. Father Thomas looked at me with a mix of admiration and sadness. He told me that he didn't want to leave. He wanted to fight for our love, but he was scared of the consequences. I felt a surge of hope. Maybe we could find a way to make it work. We spent the evening discussing our options. We talked about the possibility of being honest with Sister Margaret. Perhaps she would understand our feelings and allow us to remain. But the thought of exposing our love was daunting. I felt a mix of fear and determination. As we talked, I began to realize that we had to make a decision soon. Time was running out. I could feel the pressure building, and I knew we had to confront the truth together. The next day, I approached Sister Mary again. I wanted her support and guidance as we navigated this difficult path. I shared my feelings about Father Thomas and our plans to be honest with Sister Margaret. I could see the concern in her eyes, but also a flicker of hope. Sister Mary encouraged me to be brave. She reminded me that love is a powerful force and that it could lead to change. She believed that Sister Margaret could be understanding if we approached her honestly. I felt a surge of confidence at her words. Perhaps we could find a way to make this work. That evening, Father Thomas and I met again, this time filled with a sense of purpose. We agreed to speak with Sister Margaret together. We would tell her the truth about our feelings and our relationship. It was a bold step, but we both felt it was necessary. As we prepared for the meeting, I felt a mix of anxiety and determination. I was ready to confront my fears and embrace the possibility of a future together, no matter what the outcome. We held hands tightly, drawing strength from each other as we approached Sister Margaret's office. When we arrived, Sister Margaret was surprised to see us together. She invited us in and we both took a deep breath. I felt my heart racing as we began to speak. I opened my heart to her, telling her about our love and how it had grown. I spoke about the joy and the fear we faced. Father Thomas supported me, sharing his feelings and how he had struggled with the weight of our secret. He explained his desire to be honest and to seek understanding. I could see the surprise in Sister Margaret's eyes, but she listened intently. As we spoke, I felt a mixture of hope and fear. I was pouring my heart out, and I didn't know how she would react. Sister Margaret listened carefully, her expression thoughtful. After we finished, she took a moment to process what we had said. Finally, she spoke. Her voice was calm but firm. She told us that the church held strict rules, and our relationship was against those rules. I felt a wave of disappointment wash over me. But then she continued, saying that she could see how much we cared for each other. Sister Margaret explained that love is a complex thing. She acknowledged the strength of our feelings, but reminded us of the responsibilities we had taken on as members of the convent. I felt my heart sink. She suggested that we take time to reflect on our decision. We could explore our feelings, but we had to do so with caution. I felt a mixture of relief and disappointment. We were not expelled, but our future was uncertain. As we left Sister Margaret's office, I felt overwhelmed. I had hoped for understanding, but I also felt the weight of her words. Father Thomas took my hand, and I could see the determination in his eyes. We had faced our fears together, and now we had to decide how to move forward. We stood together in silence, knowing that the journey ahead would be challenging. We had chosen to embrace our love, but now we had to navigate the complexities of our situation. Together, we vowed to support each other, no matter what the future held. I felt a sense of hope as we walked away, knowing that we had taken a brave step forward. The road ahead would not be easy, but I was ready to face it with Father Thomas by my side. Our love was worth fighting for, and I was determined to see where it would lead us. After our meeting with Sister Margaret, I felt a mix of uncertainty and hope. We had been honest, and although it wasn't the resolution I had hoped for, we were still together. We decided to take time to reflect, but the weight of our situation felt heavy on my heart. Days turned into weeks, and the tension in the convent grew. I could feel the whispers around me, and I knew the sisters were concerned. I tried to focus on my duties, but my mind was often elsewhere. I thought about Father Thomas and the future we could have together. I also worried about the cost of our love. One evening, I found Sister Mary in the garden. She could see the struggle in my eyes. I confided in her about my fears. I told her that I felt lost, unsure of what to do. She listened patiently, her expression filled with understanding. She reminded me that love is often complicated. She said it could bring joy, but it could also lead to pain. I appreciated her support, but I felt a heaviness in my heart. I wanted to be true to my feelings, but I also wanted to honor my commitments to the convent. After our conversation, I decided I needed to speak with Father Thomas again. I wanted to share my thoughts and feelings with him. That night, I met him at our usual spot in the park. The sky was clear and the stars shone brightly above us. It was a beautiful night, but I felt anxious. When I saw him, my heart swelled with love. We embraced and I could feel the warmth of his presence. We settled onto a bench and I took a deep breath. I knew we had to talk about our future. I started by telling him how much our love meant to me. I expressed my fears about what the future held. I felt like we were on a path that could lead to trouble, and I didn't want to hurt him or bring shame to the convent. He listened intently, nodding as I spoke. Father Thomas took my hands and looked into my eyes. He told me that he cared deeply for me and that he wanted to find a way for us to be together. He felt the same worries I did, but he believed that our love was worth fighting for. His words filled me with hope, but I also felt a deep sense of responsibility. He suggested that we could take a step back and focus on our individual paths for now. It would give us time to reflect and understand what we truly wanted. I understood his reasoning, but the thought of being apart filled me with sadness. I wanted to be with him, but I also knew we needed to be careful. As we talked, I felt a shift within myself. I realized that I didn't want to run away from my feelings. I wanted to embrace them, even if it meant facing difficult choices. I told Father Thomas that I was willing to take the risk. I wanted to support him, no matter what the future held. He smiled and I could see a glimmer of hope in his eyes. We agreed to continue our relationship while being mindful of the challenges we faced. We would take things one day at a time, supporting each other as we navigated this complicated journey. Over the next few weeks, we found ways to connect without drawing too much attention. We met in secret, sharing our thoughts and dreams. Each encounter brought joy, but I could still feel the tension in the air. The whispers around the convent grew louder, and I worried that our secret would soon be exposed. One day, as I was cleaning the chapel, I overheard two sisters talking. They were discussing rumors about Father Thomas and me. I felt my heart race. I knew we had to be careful. If anyone found out, it could ruin everything. That evening, I met with Father Thomas and shared what I had heard. He looked concerned but remained calm. He reminded me that we had to be wise in our actions. We needed to focus on our love while being cautious about how we navigated our lives in the convent. But as the days passed, the pressure mounted. I felt like we were living on borrowed time. I began to question whether we could truly have a future together. I wanted to be with him, but I also felt the weight of my vows. The conflict within me grew, and I knew I had to confront it. One night, I made a decision. I couldn't live in fear any longer. I needed to speak with Sister Margaret again. I wanted to be honest about my feelings and the toll that secrecy was taking on me. It was time to confront the truth once and for all. The next day, I approached Sister Margaret. My heart raced as I knocked on her door. When she opened it, I felt a surge of courage. I told her that I needed to talk. She invited me in, and I took a deep breath. I explained how much Father Thomas meant to me and how our love had grown. I shared my fears about the rumors and the pressure of keeping our relationship a secret. I poured my heart out, hoping for understanding. Sister Margaret listened carefully, her expression thoughtful. When I finished, she took a moment to reflect. She told me that she appreciated my honesty but reminded me of the rules that guided our lives. I felt a wave of disappointment wash over me, but I also felt a sense of relief for having shared my truth. She encouraged me to think deeply about my choices. She reminded me that love is a complex journey and it requires courage. I felt a glimmer of hope as she spoke. Perhaps there was a way to find balance between my love for Father Thomas and my commitment to the convent. As I left her office, I felt a mix of emotions. I was still uncertain about the future, but I was determined to embrace my feelings. I wanted to fight for our love, even if it meant facing challenges. That night, I met with Father Thomas once more. I shared my conversation with Sister Margaret. We talked about the importance of being honest and open about our feelings. We knew that the road ahead would not be easy, but we were ready to face it together. In that moment, I felt a sense of clarity. I wanted to embrace my love for Father Thomas fully. I was willing to confront the challenges and navigate the complexities of our relationship. Together, we could find a way to honor our love while being true to ourselves. As we held each other close, I knew that whatever lay ahead, we would face it together. Our love was worth fighting for, and I was ready to embrace the journey, no matter how difficult it might be. The days after my conversation with Sister Margaret were filled with tension. I had shared my feelings, but I still felt uncertain about our future. The weight of my choices pressed down on me. I wanted to embrace my love for Father Thomas, but I also worried about the consequences. Rumors continued to swirl around the convent. I could feel the sisters watching me closely. I tried to focus on my duties, but my mind was often elsewhere. Each time I saw Father Thomas, my heart raced, but I also felt a pang of fear. What if someone found out? One afternoon, as I was cleaning the chapel, I overheard two sisters talking. They were discussing the rumors about me and Father Thomas, and I felt my stomach drop. I knew we had to be careful. If anyone discovered our feelings, it would change everything. Later that evening, I met with Father Thomas in the park. I shared what I had heard. He listened carefully, his expression serious. He told me that we needed to be cautious. We couldn't let our love put us in danger. I nodded, understanding the weight of his words. We spoke about the possibility of being discovered. I felt a knot in my stomach as we discussed the consequences. If the church found out, we could be expelled from the convent. The thought terrified me. I didn't want to lose him, but I also didn't want to face the shame that would come with our love. As we talked, I could see the burden on Father Thomas's shoulders. He was struggling with his own fears. He told me that he had been considering the transfer to another parish more seriously. I felt a wave of sadness wash over me. The thought of him leaving filled me with dread. I took a deep breath, trying to gather my thoughts. I didn't want him to go, but I also understood his desire for a fresh start. I feared that if he left, I would lose the love that had brought so much joy into my life. I needed to find a way to keep him close. I suggested that we could find a way to be together while also respecting our vows. We could keep our love a secret for now, but we would have to be careful. I could see the hope flicker in his eyes, but he also seemed unsure. We agreed to keep our relationship hidden, but I could feel the pressure building. The rumors were getting louder, and I knew that if someone discovered the truth, it could ruin everything. I felt trapped, caught between my love for Father Thomas and my commitment to the convent. As the days passed, I noticed changes in the convent. The atmosphere felt tense, and I could see the concern in the eyes of the other sisters. They were worried about the rumors, and I felt a wave of guilt wash over me. I didn't want to bring shame to the convent, but I also didn't want to hide my love. One evening I found Sister Mary in the garden. She looked troubled, and I felt a surge of concern for her. I approached her asking if everything was all right. She hesitated before speaking, and I could see the worry in her eyes. Sister Mary shared her fears about the rumors and the toll they were taking on the sisters. She told me that she felt a sense of unease, knowing that something was wrong. I felt a knot tighten in my stomach. I wanted to confide in her, but I also worried about the consequences. I took a deep breath and decided to share my feelings with her. I told her about my love for Father Thomas and the challenges we faced. I could see her surprise, but she listened intently as I spoke. I felt a sense of relief in sharing my truth, but I also felt the weight of her judgment. After I finished, Sister Mary took a moment to process what I had said. She told me that she admired my honesty but reminded me of the rules we had vowed to uphold. I felt a wave of disappointment wash over me. I knew she was right, but I didn't want to hear it. She encouraged me to think deeply about my choices. She reminded me that love is a powerful force, but it can also lead to pain. I felt torn between my heart and my vows. I wanted to follow my heart, but I also wanted to honor my commitments. As I left the garden, I felt a mix of emotions. I was grateful for Sister Mary's support, but I also felt lost. I needed to confront my feelings and make a decision about my future. I didn't want to live in fear any longer. The next day, I met with Father Thomas again. I shared my conversation with Sister Mary, and we talked about the weight of our choices. He expressed his desire to be with me, but we both understood the risks involved. We had to be careful, but we also needed to be honest with ourselves. That night I lay awake, replaying our conversation in my mind. I felt a sense of urgency. I knew we had to confront the truth, even if it meant facing difficult choices. I wanted to be brave, to embrace my love for Father Thomas fully. The following week, I decided to speak with Sister Margaret again. I needed to be honest about my feelings and the toll that secrecy was taking on me. I felt a surge of courage as I approached her office. I knocked on the door, and when she opened it, I stepped inside. I explained how much Father Thomas meant to me and the struggles we faced. I poured my heart out, hoping for understanding. Sister Margaret listened carefully, her expression thoughtful. I could see the concern in her eyes. When I finished speaking, she took a moment to reflect. She told me that she appreciated my honesty, but reminded me of the rules that guided our lives. I felt a wave of disappointment wash over me, but I also felt a sense of relief for having shared my truth. She encouraged me to think deeply about my choices. She reminded me that love is a complex journey, and it requires courage. I felt a glimmer of hope as she spoke. Perhaps there was a way to find balance between my love for Father Thomas and my commitment to the convent. As I left her office, I felt a mix of emotions. I was still uncertain about the future, but I was determined to embrace my feelings. I wanted to fight for our love, even if it meant facing challenges. I met with Father Thomas that evening, and we talked about my conversation with Sister Margaret. We agreed that we had to confront the truth together, no matter the cost. We held hands tightly, drawing strength from each other as we prepared to face whatever lay ahead. It was time to be honest. It was time to embrace our love, no matter what challenges awaited us. Together, we would navigate the complexities of our relationship and find a way to honor both our hearts and our commitments. We were ready to face the consequences, whatever they may be. The time had come for us to face the truth. Father Thomas and I had spent weeks in hiding, and now we needed to confront our feelings openly. We knew that keeping our love a secret was no longer an option. The pressure was mounting, and the whispers around the convent were growing louder. I could feel the weight of our choices pressing down on us. One evening, we decided to approach Sister Margaret together. We wanted to speak honestly about our feelings and the future. We both understood the potential consequences, but we also knew that we had to be true to ourselves. As we walked to her office, my heart raced with a mix of fear and determination. When we arrived, Sister Margaret welcomed us in with a cautious smile. I could see the surprise in her eyes at seeing us together. We took a deep breath and began to speak. I started by sharing my feelings for Father Thomas and how our love had grown despite the challenges. I poured my heart out, telling her how much he meant to me. Sister Margaret listened intently, her expression serious. When I finished, Father Thomas spoke up, sharing his own feelings and fears. He explained how difficult it had been to keep our love a secret and how we wanted to be honest about our relationship. I could see the concern in Sister Margaret's eyes as she absorbed our words. After a moment of silence, Sister Margaret spoke. She reminded us of the vows we had taken and the responsibilities we carried as members of the convent. I felt a wave of disappointment wash over me. I knew she was right, but I also felt the weight of our love pressing against the walls of my heart. Sister Margaret continued, saying that love is a powerful force, but it must be balanced with duty. She acknowledged the strength of our feelings but urged us to consider the impact on our lives and the lives of those around us. I felt conflicted. I wanted to honor my commitment, but I also wanted to embrace my love for Father Thomas. As we left Sister Margaret's office, I felt a deep sense of sadness. I had hope for understanding, but I also felt the reality of our situation closing in on me. Father Thomas took my hand and I could see the determination in his eyes. We had been honest and now we had to decide how to move forward. We walked in silence for a moment, both lost in our thoughts. I felt a mix of hope and despair. I wanted to follow my heart, but I was also aware of the risks. I looked at Father Thomas and saw the conflict in his eyes. He wanted to be with me, but he was also scared of the consequences. That night, I lay in bed, unable to sleep. I replayed the meeting with Sister Margaret in my mind. I felt torn between my love for Father Thomas and my commitment to the convent. I knew I had to make a choice, but the thought of losing him filled me with dread. The next day, I decided to take a step forward. I wanted to confront my fears and find a way to embrace my love while honoring my commitments. I met with Sister Mary again, seeking her guidance. I shared my thoughts and feelings, hoping for her support. Sister Mary listened carefully, her expression thoughtful. She reminded me that love is a journey and it often requires courage. She encouraged me to follow my heart, but she also warned me about the risks. I felt a surge of determination. I wanted to fight for my love, but I needed to be smart about it. Over the next few days, I reflected on my choices. I realized that I couldn't keep living in fear. I needed to be honest with myself and with Father Thomas. I decided to speak with him again. I wanted to share my feelings and see how we could navigate the challenges ahead. When we met, I told him that I was ready to embrace our love fully. I wanted to find a way to make it work, even if it meant facing difficult choices. I expressed my desire to be with him, no matter the cost. Father Thomas looked at me with a mixture of hope and concern. He wanted the same thing, but we both knew the risks involved. We spent the evening discussing our options. We talked about the possibility of leaving the convent and starting fresh somewhere else. The idea was both thrilling and terrifying. I felt a rush of excitement at the thought of being together, but I also worried about the consequences of leaving everything behind. As we talked, I could feel the weight of our choices pressing down on us. We knew that the road ahead would not be easy. We would have to face the challenges together, but I was ready to embrace the journey. I wanted to build a life with Father Thomas, one filled with love and honesty. After our conversation, we made a plan. We would take the next few weeks to prepare for whatever lay ahead. We would keep our love a secret for now, but we would also start thinking about our future. I felt a sense of hope as we discussed our dreams and aspirations. In the following days, I began to feel a sense of empowerment. I was ready to take control of my life and my choices. I knew that love is not easy, but I also understood that it is worth fighting for. Together, Father Thomas and I would navigate the complexities of our relationship. As I reflected on my journey, I realized that love is about being true to oneself. It requires courage, honesty, and the willingness to face the unknown. I was ready to embrace the challenges ahead, knowing that I had Father Thomas by my side. I understood that whatever the future held, I would face it with strength and determination. Our love was a testament to the power of truth, and I was ready to honor it. It was time to seek redemption for myself and for Father Thomas, to build a life grounded in love and honesty. As I closed my eyes that night, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. I was ready to embrace the journey ahead, whatever it may bring. Every day was a new opportunity to seek the truth and forge a path filled with love. I knew it would not be easy, but I was willing to fight for our love no matter the cost.